80-10-10. Most people who feed raw know this number. It looks precise, it feels balanced, and it's easy to follow. But the problem is, nature doesn't work in neat ratios. The idea behind 80-10-10 came from what's often called the prey model feeding, and the concept that if dogs evolved eating whole animals, we could copy that by feeding 80% muscle meat, 10% bone, and 10% of organs. On paper, that sounds kind of logical, but when you actually look at a real animal, those numbers don't hold up because there simply isn't a single fixed ratio in nature. What you actually see is variation. Muscle meat might sit somewhere around 50 to 70%, bones can range from 10 to 20%, organs are usually closer to 10 to 15%. And then there are entire parts that don't even appear in 80-10-10 model, like blood, skin, connective tissue, brain, eyes, or glands. All of these contribute nutrients, yet none of them are accounted for in that ratio. So if the goal was to copy a whole animal, 80-10-10 doesn't actually do that. It simplifies it. You can build two bowls that both follow 80-10-10 perfectly and still end up with completely different nutrient profiles. Want to have a look? Let's build two recipes, a chicken-based one and lamb one. Chicken first. For our bone source, I will use chicken necks. They are around 36% bone and 64% meat. Now, what most people would do would be to add 10% of chicken necks and think that would do, but this way you're only getting 3.6% bone. Instead, we need to work backwards. We have to find out how much chicken neck do we need to add to reach 10% bone in the final bowl. Since only 36% of the neck is bone, we divide 10% by 36. That gives us roughly 28%. So now our breakdown looks like this. About 28% chicken neck, which gives us our 10% bone. But that neck also brings meat with it, about 18% of meat to be more precise. So if 18% is already coming from the neck, we now only need another 62% from boneless meat and 10% offal. Make sense? Okay, so what happens when we add that into our formulator software? Let's have a look. I added 280 grams of chicken necks, 620 grams of chicken breast without any skin, and 100 grams of chicken liver. A very basic recipe, but in line with our 80-10-10 ratio. As you can see, we have a few deficiencies already. We don't have enough copper, even though we added liver. And that's another thing most people usually miss. Different proteins will have different nutritional breakdowns, and while chicken liver is very low in copper compared to one coming from a ruminant animal like cow or lamb, the farming method makes a difference too. Look at the grass beef liver. Copper is 3 times less than a farm beef liver. We then are deficient in manganese, zinc, and iodine, and we've also reached the maximum of selenium. When it comes to vitamins, we are lacking in vitamin D and E. Fats look okay, but if you look at the omega-6 to 3 ratio, it's quite high at nearly 8.5, which makes it pro-inflammatory. Ideally, we are after something less than 5 to 1. Okay, let's look at our lamb recipe now. First, the calculations. Lamb ribs are about 27% bone and 73% meat. Now again, if someone thinks, fine, I need 10% bone, so I'll just add 10% lamb rib, that doesn't work because lamb ribs are not pure bone. So to work out how much of lamb ribs you need, you divide 10% by 27%, and that gives you just over 37% lamb ribs in the final recipe to get to that 10% bone content. Now, we have to remember that 37% lamb ribs doesn't just bring bone, it also brings meat. Because if the ribs are 73% meat, then 73% of 37% is about 27% meat. So from the lamb ribs alone, you already have 10% bone and 27% meat. And if our target is 80% meat overall, we only need another 53% of that to be boneless. So to make an 80-10-10 diet using lamb ribs, the recipe would look like this: 37% lamb ribs, 53% boneless meat, and 10% organs. Now, if we add lamb ribs, lamb mince, and lamb liver, again, a basic recipe, you can see this one isn't complete too. We are okay on copper and selenium, but we have multiple other deficiencies now, like potassium, magnesium, chloride, iron, as well as manganese, zinc, and iodine. Vitamins show further deficiencies, and our linoleic acid is below the recommended level. Our omega-6 to 3 ratio looks good though, but if you look at the calories, you can see that with 1 kilo of our lamb recipe, we would be able to feed a 20-kilo dog for nearly 3 days, and only just over a day with the chicken one. This makes a huge difference, especially in less active dogs. If we're following ratios blindly without considering the dog that's in front of us, we can easily overfeed them. Yes, the examples I showed you might be oversimplified, but I wanted to show you that wherever you are on your raw feeding journey, the 80-10-10 should just be a starting point. Our modern dogs don't eat like wild canids. They don't eat fur, feathers, stomach contents, or a wide range of prey over time. And they don't regulate intake the same way. It's we who decide what's in their bowls, and they have to go along with it. Yes, 80-10-10 works well at first, especially if you've moved from an ultra-processed food. The dog enjoys the food, stools often improve, the coat can look better, so it feels like the diet is complete. But those changes don't tell you whether all nutrient needs are being met. They just tell you the food is more digestible and less processed. So if you want to feed fresh food properly, you need to think beyond ratios. You need to think in terms of nutrients. That means, where is the iodine coming from? Where is vitamin D coming from? Are you including a source of EPA and DHA? Is there enough vitamin E to match the fats in the diet? Because that's what actually determines whether a diet is complete. If you're feeding 80-10-10 right now, you don't need to scrap everything. Just start asking better questions about what's in the bowl. And if you'd like to learn more, subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.